Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. This is Derek Krebs. I'll be leading today's presentation, and we'll start here in a few minutes at 30 minutes past the hour. So welcome and sit back and relax for a few minutes, and we'll get started. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Derek Krebs. I'll be presenting today's session on Prospero, and we have a series of these webinars focused on various topics on the budgeting and reporting side, and even getting a little bit of deeper dive into such of those topics. And today's session now is going to be on reporting basics. A little bit later today, we're going to talk about multi-company consolidations on the second webinar. And then following in the months of November and December of 2019, we'll have some other ones related to both budgeting and deeper dive into reporting. So welcome one and all. We do have a large group of people today on this GoToWebinar. It is a listen-only mode session, as I am going to be sharing material. We will be recording these, and I'll be sure to pass along a nice little thank you email for attending, along with a link to this recording that will be coming maybe early next week. So extra tidbit of information on this large audience that I see. We have a mixed bag of both existing Prospero customers and prospective ones. So we welcome one and all. So I'll try to meet the needs and interest of both parties involved about the product capabilities here today. A little bit further background, I'll just spend maybe 1 minute introducing myself, follow with the agenda we'll be dealing with today, and the bulk of the time I'll be looking at the application for tips and tricks and efficiencies we can provide for you. Again, my name's Derek Krebs. I'm a senior consultant. I'm a recovering accountant. Been doing this for the last 25 years, along with our entire team at the MSX group, like you see this slide. We all began at FRX Software about 25 years ago. We helped deliver those flagship products on the reporting side of FRX and Manager Porter. And secondly, on the budgeting side, there was Microsoft Forecaster. So all of our team members were involved with the development of that, like me, a consultant, training and implementing that for numerous customers. And then secondly, on the support side, we have a lot of our original team members. So we always like to say we're here to help you on your existing Microsoft stack, but many have transitioned, like the existing customers I see on this call today, to Prospero. And in my consulting role, the fun part, I've seen hundreds of different clients across all industries, good and bad chart of accounts, but then today we're going to shed light on how Prospero can improve those efficiencies. Now, without being too long-winded on the PowerPoint, I'll be passing this along to you as well, but here's just a quick little confirmation. Does both the budgeting and reporting, primarily general ledger based, but we also can report and budget on non-general ledger data. I'll just sort of leave it as paraphrased for that for right now. We'll have separate sessions on such. One quick slide about Prospero. And my paraphrase to this is you have options, meaning you're not bound by one way. Well, we use behind the scenes one SQL database to store all of our report data, including budget data. So in years past, you always had to manually import and export budget data back and forth. Pain in the butt with the old Microsoft ways with forecasters, et cetera, and general ledger. So now it's one cohesive tool to do this. Prospero has its own data warehouse, but I hate saying data warehouse, especially data mart, because Manager Porter had bad design on that. We've fixed all of those shortcomings, what they call change tracking, and we built our data mart. And then additional advantage of that SQL database, data mart, is also to store and budget non-general ledger data. One last little remark on the install. We have three primary options of, do you want to have these Prospero elements installed in your internal servers? Secondly, of three options, do we want a third party doing the hosting? Or third option, we could have MSX host these elements. So at least you have the combination of those options to provide on that. And last little note, more a little bit IT related, is we have really three pieces to the Prospero structure. We have a client that will spend most of my time on designing reports, viewing them. Secondly, we have that SQL database tier I described earlier, like the data warehouse, I'll refer to it. And third, last little piece of puzzle is the IIS, meaning a web little tier as well. So in case I get asked about some little web deployment type, I'll be glad to follow up on any IT-specific questions offline on that, but there's one quick little high-level remark. Now, thankfully, as I turn the clock back and think about all of those years in clients, Microsoft and, of course, the company we were at, FX Software, before Microsoft acquired us, had an awesome design product, meaning we had interchangeable and reusable rows, columns, and trees. Well, we're using that same type of design. That way I can have, let's say they're in blue, one row format I use for 20 different reports. That way I can mix and match those. That way if I need to change my mind or make an edit, I just go so in one spot. So that's why I love, I actually work with several other budgeting reporting tools, but I favor definitely those that use the row, column, or trees for at least that one key thing, and I'll show you visually in the product. Secondly, there in red are column definitions, same type of story. We can mix and match. And represented there at the top, we leverage our reporting trees even more robustly now in Prospero structure to maybe report prompts or budget prompts of companies or locations or departments that you want to choose or enter data to. And what's also new and a little bit different for those that had any Microsoft Forecaster experience, we also now have in Prospero awesome capabilities within our account segment, like revenue, expense, balance sheet, to subgroup those and what we call the expand feature, as I'm going to bullet point some of my personal favorite and our client's favorite feature to avoid and reduce maintenance altogether in a report. We do have graphical display of data, as I'll probably start with showing a couple quick splash screens, both graphically displaying the data and also sort of a report format. Here is two quick screenshots on the budgeting side, but not really my focus today. I might show you maybe just one or two quick second screens on that. Now, final thing I'm going to wrap up with in the PowerPoint, I'm going to then jump into the application, is as I was reflecting on all these years of pain points where I got kicked in the stomach on some of these shortcomings of the reporting and budgeting past lives of these products, well, we internally learned over those 25 plus years, and about 9 years ago, Prospero was released to the market. We learned for some of those challenges and shortcomings. Just to name a few here, one was obviously no longer development of the products, the Microsoft stack these last 4 or 5 years. No new features in Manager Reporter or Forecaster, but we have now an actively developing and improving Prospero product. Most product features coming from feedback from you, and I'll show you that little screen, especially existing customers you can leverage and let us know what you would like to see in upcoming releases. Security, I'll just talk about, let's say in Manager Reporter size that maybe I see many of you have came from. Decentralized, but now we have a centralized model. Also in Manager Reporter, you only had 4 rigid roles to work within. You have much more. The application line, like those using Microsoft Forecaster or Manager Reporter, you had to do double the work, double the line set maintenance and setup, double the users, double the trees, import, export data back and forth. So now, thankfully, Prospero is one cohesive application that does both the budgeting / forecasting realm along with the reporting world as well. So glad to finally see that many years come into fruition that Microsoft and we internally worked to try to come up with that, but never did. But now we have development underneath our belt, so glad to see that. Line set maintenance, I'll just plug the word expand feature. I'll elaborate on that further. Report outputs, we brought many of them back that FX had that Manager Reporter took away. So we have now Viewer, Excel, PDF, and Printer we've brought back based on customer request and demand. Last slide, challenges is really no graphing ability in Microsoft Forecaster. Manager Reporter, lame, you only can graph one single row or column. No one really uses or does that. But now Prospero has robust 3-dimensional graphing and drilling in. Drill order, one of my favorite features too as an analyst of the data, that I can slice and dice nimbly a report, which in years past I had to have about 3, 4, 5 different reports to accomplish now what one report does, including also a nice little report library to archive and share reports, statistics. I'm a big fan of that for KPIs, key performance metrics for comparing and budgeting my data. And then also one of the biggest differentiators too when moving from these legacy products to Prospero is our conversion ability, meaning all those many man and woman hours of creating your FX and Manager Reporter reports could be days, weeks worth of effort. We can convert all that across. And secondly, on the licensing side, we find ourselves about 1/3 of the prices of competing ones on both the license side and secondly on the services side based on the sort of conversion notes I mentioned. All right, so let me now jump into the application, Prospero. What I'm going to start with is we're looking right now at a report collection. And let me set the stage further for a real case you find yourself in routinely. That is, at month end, I need to crank out maybe 3 or 4 different reports that I distribute to you. How about all of you are my managers within my organization? I send you 3 or 4 different reports. We can group all of those into one report collection, and I can seamlessly run that nimbly for multiple reports all at once within a report collection. Here's an example of a dashboard of multiple graphs in that report collection. I can expand one of these and further drill into it. And let me even go to now a more administrator window. That's more of an end user side. I'm now displaying it. And how about one other end user perspective? And I do have some of these windows already open in advance to make the most efficient use of our time today. 2 different users I'll begin with. Right now, as an end user, notice here to the left, I have very limited links. It has a nice office look and feel. That way they don't have to learn any new products, especially you power users. You'll see a lot of the familiarity behind the tool that we want to have. Now, for an end user, they might simply have this Publish Reports area, and you can scheme up your folders any way imaginable. They might be date-driven, like here's my 2019 and months within, or my Group A folders might be group-driven, like here's reports from my board of directors or managers, or maybe report type. So you can scheme up your folders in any structure of how you want to store and share these reports together. Secondly, if they're doing any budget input, they might have budget version A, B, or C available here. And finally, high level, they also have a quick launch, which is basically a one-click when I launch into the application or log in. This might be a one-click to open up this report. Now let's talk briefly about the companies and segments/dimensions that we have in our demonstration database. Well, first of all, for company, we definitely are in a multi-company environment. So we have 3 companies that I might share a little bit of data on. And then I have a session later today talking about multi-company consolidations a little bit further. This user actually has all company access. Otherwise, they would be restricted of what they'll have available to them. Now, this report actually has as the prompts the company, secondly, location, and third, department. But there might be reports that might have locations in columns where I'm not prompted for it. And one of our main security segregations of our different user in this database example is by location. Now, this one user only has the Denver service location available in their pick list. And normally it would recognize this selection from the last time they opened up this report, but since I toggled in different ones logged in administrator, that's why I'm having to choose it. And then when I open up this report, they have all of the interactive nature behind this report, as I'm just using a nice little general word for that. And let me just take a second to also bullet point some of the key features that I'll be walking through in this report building block basics session. When I mentioned about interacting with the report, here's a few other little subgroups that I'm going to get into. One is the ability to drill down into the report, including down to the financial account and transaction level, and some other past applications or others out there. What's nice is in Prospero, when I drill in, I can see it across all columns, meaning multiple months, actual budget. It's not single cell specific. Drill method. Well, we have 2 drill methods. With one click, I can see the entire kitchen sink, what I call the account level detail, or many times I like using tree levels that subgroups it by my different companies and dimensions that I'll illustrate. We'll look at this publish reports area, where I also can annotate, maybe explain financial footnotes of variances to actual budget, report collection, like at month end, these 3 reports I send you, I'll group them all together, just generate and automate that structure. Graphing, various outputs to definitely the electronic viewer workspace I prefer to more nimbly drill in, graph, etc. But definitely I'll maybe illustrate some outputted examples of Excel, PDF, etc. And definitely I'll still make some remarks on security, which is very important in a robust tool to only have information designated to those individuals that they do see. Followed by, as I go in through various reports, I'm going to look at the foundational elements like our good old lines/rows. Secondly, our columns. And third, our reporting trees. Then additionally, I'm going to talk about just some other general miscellaneous notes, like I already spoke of this FRX image reporter conversion. Now as I bullet pointed some of the areas, I'm now going to take you to the next few minutes. Let's start with the drill down level. I'm going to go back to this one report. I might be the manager. I want to look at this financial, maybe actual budget year to date. And if I want to further drill in, by all means, I can do so. This might be my next level down of my report. And it so happens to be the different departments, like sales and marketing department. I can continue down further. Now within sales, I'm actually down to the account and followed by transaction level. And in our demonstration database, we also can even show vendors or customers right now. I just have more of a generic vendor name. That way we are politically correct and not stealing existing customer names here. But these are additional transaction details. The word detail being the key word. That way when I show you the column definition, along with some of these balance columns, like balances from the general ledger actual, or balances can be real-time from the Prospero budget. And if I then make a budget update, I can immediately come back to this report and see those without having to do all the extra Excel hell rigmarole in that regard. Another thing I favor, even though it just took me maybe literally 5 minutes to get acquainted with it, was we have a nice tabular design to this report, because I don't have to bounce around to and close screens to reopen, because here as I can see the transaction detail, I go back to the original account level, even the subtotaled fashion by, let's say, department first, meaning sales and marketing, or I can go back to my original financial level. Now additionally, another interactive bullet point was the ability to quickly display that data as a chart. So I'm just going to click on this, and this is what I call a three-dimensional chart. Instead of Manager Reporter being a sort of lame single row or single column, these are multiple columns and multiple rows of data. I can then even further drill down to the report. So here I'm just going to take this one little pie node and drill down, and then there's that little slice between sort of the sales and marketing. I drilled into the report view earlier in, but now this is a graphical view of that data. And I could have as well gone directly from that one report version to the graph as well when I drilled in. And then just really in contrast, meaning I'm in the graphical view, I can go back to what's called the report view nimbly. Now better yet, I'm just going to close out a couple of these tabs and windows, and let me now log in as an administrator. I'm going to open up that same report. Now here is the overall report design, where we have our trusted favorite line set, what column. And let me take you first of all this home tab, because what I loved about some of these past products, including Prospero, is this catalog view where I can easily inventory all my reports. I can come up here and click on one of these column headings, like this line set, and I can share and reuse these over and over and over. Versus some other applications, they're disparate individual files, Excels, that I don't have this inventory and reusable nature for on that. I can see also when was last created, modified. So I have a nice little high-level audit trail looking columns here to the right of all these reports. And secondly, related to that thought, under the Tools menu, we have a lot of our public companies or those that like to do more audit control, like who changed what and when. I even can get more granularly here, looking at the activity log of every change made within the application. And then just an example, this window might be, all right, someone was in the budget input screen doing some modifications. Or someone who was here updating this line set called Z Derek on this date and time. And I'm logged in as a generic admin user, but it would say Bob, Sally, we're in here. I'll just gloss over that. That goes hand in hand with sort of inventory control, reusable nature. And many people, even Prospero existing customers, are not familiar with some of these buttons. So thank you for letting me share that for both audiences, existing and prospective customers. We have various report Settings I can predefine. Like briefly on the Options tab, I'm going to take you to running this report twice. First of all, with tree levels, then without. Let me just focus on that field, mainly. As I run the report, I'll even run it for all companies here. And I'll talk about these prompts, including our default tree called all, in just a second. But as this report renders, especially me, a power user that has more company and locational access than the first end user I demonstrated with, I'll just do the same type of drill method, meaning sales. I'm using trees. And oftentimes at times, I come up here and want to show hidden columns, because in this case, these are our locational numbers that sometimes me, the bean counter, I like to display, but maybe not on this toolbar icon. I simply turn it off, because in years past, you'd have to have two separate reports, which now you have one. And then similarly, a lot of times I'll have an income statement summary, and I can make it a detail just by showing hidden lines or not. Now this is my first level of drill down, being my different locations. And let me just take Denver. This is my next level, meaning companies. This is company 1 and company 2. And I can continue going down further, maybe based on my different segment levels. Now, any one of these slices, what I can do is I can export this slice out to Excel. And I'll just give it some random file name here. Now, if I wanted, with this ad hoc slice data, to further work or share the data with you users, but there it is, all my data sent out to Excel. This is sort of one sheet and one dimensionally, but I do have open here in my illustration here. I'm going to go to this one income statement that you'll notice here in just a second. I have different tabs. If I open up the right file, excuse me. And there's the company one I wanted to share. Excuse that click. All right. Basically, instead of looking at just one single company, here might be company 2, company 1, or consolidated. During a report generation time, to accomplish that same type of little motion, let me go back to my administrator window. And when I ran the report, and after the report is actually rendered, I can click on this Reopen Report button. Now, what this nimbly allows me to do is, instead of looking at, and since I drilled into company 1 last, I might want to look at company 2 or company 3. And I could have separate windows or tabs open for that. I can toggle back and forth, meaning I don't have to close one company and rerun and open up another. I can see multiple. And in this little prompt, I can come up here in my company. Let me now just do a quick little side remark on a couple of these here too, is looking at our trees. What I love about Prospero is there is an automatic tree called all, which means it gets created automatically for me. And also, as I create new companies or new locations, new departments, new accounts, they automatically get added to this tree, which saves you a huge amount of time, pain, and manual reconciliation you're doing in your world today. Another quick note is we're able to wildcard the company versus Manager Porter. If I had 5 companies and 10 departments in Manager Porter, I'd have to have a 50-plus unit tree because I cannot wildcard the company. So that was me as I was preparing on the multi-company consolidation. That sort of came to mind as looking at this. And we're going to revisit trees in a little bit later when I talk about the account segment. But if I wanted to run all of these at once, I can simply choose them all, then click OK. And that's how I produce that Excel file we saw in the background. Or if I was in the workspace, it would just show me tab 1, 2, or 3 for the companies. But I'm not going to do those clicks to save time. Now, that was super easy. I mean, literally in seconds, I could choose which companies I do or do not want. And then based on customer feedback, earlier this year, we added a new feature to be able to predefine these prompts through a line set definition. And I'm probably just going to paraphrase it at that. So those existing Prospero customers, in case you're on a data release, we're going to try to send out some communication let you know what the latest release is and some new features. So that'll be one of our objectives here in this fourth quarter, tail end or beginning of 2020, to share some of the latest product features and new features to leverage. All right, let me cancel out of that. Thank you for letting me now show you some of those trees and prompts. And I'm going to close out some of these drill down tabs. And one of my favorite features, just to more explicitly demonstrate, is on the fly, I can come up here and change the drill order. Now, I've already predefined for this report to drill into location first, company second, etc. But how about randomly, I'm just going to drag department to the top as the sentence reads. So top down now, department first, location second. Now when I drill into sales, I have a completely different slice of my organization by being able to change the drill order on the fly. Now I love that versus, again, I used to have 4 or 5 different reports. Now with one, changing the drill order on that. At any time, I can again display it as a chart to see that graphically represented. And speaking of report or chart types, on the options tab, yes, we're looking at tree levels. How about let me change that account level detail. I'll just close a couple of these tabs here as I show you that second illustration, which means with one click, I see the entire kitchen sink account level detail. But to wrap up that thought on chart, all I had to do is turn on one little check mark to provide that charting and drill down nature. All I had to do is say yes or no, and then we have various chart types you can choose from. There might be an instance where you do or do not want certain data graphed. One example is I'm opening up the column. Yeah, I graphed actual prior year and budget data. But notice here, suppress on chart. We can say, all right, these variances, no, don't graph. That's all we have to do. And then maybe in the line set, maybe something like gross margin percent, don't graph. And that might be one other related little tip or note on the graphing side, especially for existing customers to be aware of. Now let me rerun the report. Hopefully it's not too segregated here, but definitely a few little thoughts I want to check off my list and finish up with. But now I'm basically going to rerun the report with that account level detail there in the background, meaning not tree levels. And then with one click, I can see all the detail. Show hidden columns, might be different accounts, which is our first segment. It might be different locations, which is our middle segment, or it might be different departments, the third. But with one click, I see the entire detail. Okay, but I always like to paraphrase, at least you have those options available to you. Now, let's actually take a closer look at the line and column of this report. And I'm going to paint a little horror picture coming from Halloween there about pain in the butt in your past world. I'm going to call this an income statement detail, where as I show hidden columns, we're showing individual accounts. That's one option. Or maybe I just show one level down. Maybe one level down might be these accounts might be salaries and wages. Maybe the next level down in my tree might be travel, so I can group them or subgroup them based on different levels, like total expense, maybe one level down being total salaries or total travel. But I'm exploding and showing all accounts currently. And this account called EXPN, you can give it any ID you want. And that's what we call a summary account. Versus a second option is using ranges, wildcards, etc. But one of the most efficient ways is to use summary accounts. Since I'm an administrator, I can open up the line and column for this report. And I'm going to focus on this field called the natural. That's our account segment. Well, I can show individual accounts, but better yet, on this expenses row, I'm going to go inside this pick list. And I have two choices, thankfully, nimbly on the fly I can choose. I can see a list of accounts, like here's all my revenues with a 4 prefix, etc. These are read real time from your general ledger. But I'm going to use a tree instead. Usually, yep, you have this default tree, automatically created, automatically maintained based on major account groups. That might help me on my balance sheet. But usually you have maybe your own groupings of accounts, especially if you're on a not clean chart of accounts. So usually instead of having 5 or 6 trees, you only have one main tree like this net income I'm going to continue with. Maybe my next level down might be expenses, which I might just use this simple range or subgroups like I quoted earlier. Which another way to phrase that, great, I do not have to update this tree, nor I do not have to update this line set as new accounts get added, both on the report side, my focus today, but usually this same type of line set could also be used for budget entry, that cookie cutter approach, this one line set used across many location departments. And maybe gross profit, just to show you, that might be subgrouped as you wish and as you name, like COGS, could be wild cards, labor, material, based on any subgroups you want. So the last little punchline is I'm using this expenses, range, no maintenance to my tree. And over here to the right, we have one little button that said, all right, do you want to expand and show the detail? And I could do above, show the individual accounts, or below. And to the right, I'm saying, and it defaults to 0, means show me every individual account. Otherwise, I could say 1 level, meaning if total expense was in your tree, your main level, I might have salaries and wages, one subgroup beneath it, or subgroup 2 might be travel, subgroup 3 might be utilities, you name it. So I might say 1 level down efficiently. We also have some ability because maybe on the main parent line, meaning total expenses, I want this formatting like bold and underline, but maybe on the expanded accounts, maybe not bold, or maybe I want an indent and no underline. So I can get very granular, but notice again, this is only one simple line that I'm doing all of my account formatting. As I go full circle back, a little hard to see, but there's the indentation, there's the bold but not bold on these, and that is the powerful summary accounts. Now, what I'd like to also remind you of is this is more of a read-only session, but definitely throughout today, you can take advantage of the questions area. And usually I reserve the last maybe 5 or so minutes of today's phone call to field some of those. And time permitting, a lot of times I'll personally follow up with such, because usually in this abbreviated sessions that's recorded, we want to have it be sort of more efficient for recording afterward. I'll be sure to address maybe those the last few minutes or afterwards if I decide to punt any of these questions that might be a little more detailed oriented. All right, let me now continue with this report here. Let's look once again at the column definition. Thankfully, it has a very familiar look and feel to you. That here might be actual data we grabbed. Now, most of these budgets are grabbed from the general ledger for history, but going forward, normally we have just one budget or a couple different budget versions, like best case, worst case, where most of our customers use the budgeting tool in Prospero to then have it automatically entered and read from without having to jump through a bunch of hoops. We additionally have, as I was focusing on 2 balance columns, like actual here to the left, or maybe budget to the right. And let's continue. Yeah, this is our budget in Prospero we're entering. Otherwise, I can grab budget from the great GL. We have the similar fields for a year and period. Old FRX used to call it base, but now we more aptly call it year and period, like I'm looking at the prior year. And we have nice little wizards, like here in the year field, it will help you, like if you want to look at 1 year ago, 2 years ago, etc. And on the period field, something similar. And finally here, just some other key things without getting too nitty-gritty. And I call it the 90-10 rule. 90% of your reports are only going to use 10% of the functionality. That's what I'm just going to focus on. And then here is where it's periodic. That means monthly balances. Otherwise, year-to-date or beginning. That's sometimes used for balance sheets or statement of cash flows, those beginning. Now, really the only rule of thumb, especially formula related, is, and hold that thought just 1 second, because in the line set, a lot of times in some of your past reports, you might have had tons of formulas here, like total revenue, you having to sum it all up, or gross profit having to sum it up, etc., etc. Well, thankfully, using these summary accounts that are centrally defined and maintained in one single tree that might flow to 50, 100 different line sets and reports, I don't have to maintain and worry about formula data integrity on that. Now, on a rare formula that might be a multiplication or division, the only rule of thumb is in Prospero, we have this code field. The code can be anything you want. The code normally is your account, but here notice if I'm doing a range, but usually I probably should have used a summary account, I can call that code anything. And basically all this does is take my gross profit row or code, divide by revenue, and that's just in square brackets, and then really we're multiplying by 100. So instead of showing 0.35 for 35%, maybe I'm showing a whole number, so that's why we multiplied by 100. So that's really the only key rule inside Prospero. So thankfully you don't have to know tricked out calculation logic with some of the other applications I work with. You have to know MDX language, etc., but thankfully very accountant friendly. Now let me turn my attention back to the column definition, almost repeat the same type of thing. Now my column code could be A, B, C, D, whatever you want, especially when we convert all of your FX Manager Reporter reports across. That's usually what the code is. But I just came in here and relabeled it. Instead of column C, I called it actual or budget. And then here I have more of a nice, more user-friendly name, taking like budget minus actual. When I mentioned those detail columns earlier, when I run and view down to the transaction level, both you, the power user, and your end users, they can see all the way down to vendor and customer information. So all you need to do or include is this detail column type. And then this little pick list might vary ever so slightly based on what general ledger system and database you're on. And Prospero interfaces with a bunch of different GLs. This is just a simple canned version of some different transaction detail, but like vendor and customer, some common little paraphrased items that I could include and drill in to see for all users. Now, in this column, we're only focused mainly on what I call sort of time, like this year, last year, months, etc., actual budget. But if I wanted to do a nice little comparison of, let's say, companies side by side, I am just calling out here to the right the properties of this column, normally only period we need. But how about if I wanted to show company? What just occurred is an extra line or filter here for the company came across. And I'm going to come here to the property, and maybe I want to thumbtack that to maybe dock that so it does not auto-hide, which usually I do auto-hide by unthumbtacking that. And then what I'll do in just a second is I'm going to pull up a multi-company consolidated report on this company dimension. In my report area, I can nicely group in inventory reports like consolidated, and then here is that one report with those company now filters populated and used in real time. I'm just going to simply click OK. I don't have to worry about my prompts most of the time. Now there's a complete report showing company 1, US, company 2, etc. And I could still drill in to see all the detail as needed, either using tree levels or in this case account level detail, meaning one click the kitchen sink. I don't have a row segment ID showing the account number on this column, but my other column does. This column here, just to repeat that thought, does show the row segment ID. It might be the account number on the top report of your different revenue expenses, or when I drill in, it could show the location or department or company numbers based on this. And I suppressed always, but then with that little toggle switch, I said, show me hidden columns or show me hidden lines. So awesome feature than that. I can do also nice little vertical lines, have all the presentation quality of font controls, etc. on this completed report. And then there's one example of a line that all those years FX Manager Reporter never had, so we can do so in different line and column formats, a little bit more user-friendly nature to presentation quality. We have some sort of lipstick on this report, like headings, colors, shading, fonts, but I even can get fancier as need be. Now let me look back to some other little bullet points, and I'll paraphrase a few that I'm going to touch upon further. Let me spend just another time or two on trees and segments, followed by we're going to look at some of these items here regarding easy feedback, maybe where this item's used. Returning back to the application. One of my line sets I might frequently use over and over. I'm not quite sure where it might be used, so I can right mouse click, in this case on the line set, or this is a report, excuse me, On any type of building block, like a line set, I can right mouse click on top of an item and right here, where is it used? There's my reusable nature. These are all reports, but many times it might say budget input. But here's this one line set I can quickly see across all, but some other applications I have no visibility or no reusable nature to such. So me, the implementer and trainer, that's why I like to keep it super simple. So don't make it more complicated than it has to be. So thanks, development team, on all those years of cleaning this up. Now let's also go the other direction. We looked at that report like this total expenses summary account. Let's look back to our trees, especially where I maybe edit those or maintain. I'll start with our natural account segment. Here's that default tree that automatically gets created and maintained. And normally you only have one other tree. We call it TNet. That might be both your balance sheet and income statement. I'll double click to open this up. Well, what I can easily do is, and I'm going to role play with other segments like division or department, I can come up here and drag and drop. So I just drag cost of goods sold from this node to another, because these might be different regions for my locations, etc., different management responsibility. So literally in seconds I can drag and drop. I can use wildcards, I can use ranges, I can use a combination of both. And how about on this expenses node that we saw used for that one report, I'm going to now go the other direction. I'm going to right mouse click here, where used, and then it will tell me, okay, Derek, yep, it's using all these single line sets. Great, because if I change my mind, okay, management says, all right, now this account used to be in other recurring revenue. It wants to move it to down below the line. I drag and drop it once, and automatically will flow to all these line sets, all these reports that reference this summary account. So you can probably hear me preaching the flexibility, ease, and use of those. So hopefully I've duly represented that and love that about the product. Location, let me open up this regional tree. All right, I reside in California. I might be the West Coast manager. Here might be some of the locations I'm in charge of, which are all the 3 prefixes. And better yet, we probably should have done a wildcard. That way, if we add a new location, like a McDonald's franchise, we don't have to update the tree. And there's what this bottom example does using wildcard. Maybe related to that, let's just do 1 or 2 quick side notes on security. This product is by accountants and for accountants with little or no IT involvement, some buzz phrases we always use. So under security, I'm usually the accountant like you power user doing this. I don't need IT. We love them, but don't need them. When I'm in the user area, one of those PowerPoint slides I referenced talked about, okay, it was very decentralized. In Manager Porter, you had to go to all your different folders in your report library. Secondly, in Manager Porter, you had to open up all your different trees and then open up all your individual tree units to define security. And if a person changed and left the company, or even changed from Department A to maybe Department B, you'd have to rerun all your Manager Porter reports. Also, when you rerun all your Manager Porter reports, it stored every single version of those reports. But in Prospero, it only saved that blessed version when you publish it out, which I'm going to be segueing to. On the security, Manager Porter only had 4 rigid roles, but now we have infinite here. And now, no, I don't have to maintain 2 separate applications, meaning the budget reporting side. We have now 1. Now let me now take those same type of words. These are the different roles / groups we have. Now, usually we can use Windows logins to the application, which IT loves hearing, because when I open up Prospero, either it be this client or sort of web-based interface based on how you install or deploy the system, usually you're using Windows authentication, meaning every morning I'm logging as my network user. Usually we use that to log in, that IT loves. Now, secondly, we have some generic users in this generic database. Like here is the business analysts of the West that fall within this designer group or role. Now, you have very good granular controls. I even can create new roles or modify these canned ones. And then one final thing, these are sort of the role properties, what they can or cannot do in the application. Maybe the last 2 things security related, but super simple, is a user's assignments of what data they can see, and secondly, what reports are budget versions, what we call the visibility. Now, of those two things, let's start with the assignments, meaning what data company departments they can see. So this Business Analyst West, I have highlighted on the toolbar assignments. I have one simple row. I could add a second, third, or fourth as need be. Companies. This asterisk is a wild card. That means all companies. But how about let's role play? Nope. This person only gets company 1 access. And I could have obviously chosen the tree for that. Especially, let's say, on the location. Now this location so happens to be like Derek. I reside in the West Coast. This is all my West units. And better yet, we probably should have used a wild card here, but that way if things change, I simply just change my one central tree, or maybe not at all using a wild card, and then that flows downstream to security using the summary center, and will also flow downstream to any line sets, columns, calcs that reference that as well. So good. One other iteration of these trees now on the security side being so user-friendly. I'll probably just stop on that so I can get very granular in company division department, even down to the account level as well, maybe based on different lines or reports they have access to. Now, the second key thing I mentioned, key buzzwords, was what I call visibility. And let me compare real world. How about a balance sheet? Only my power users can see that versus income statement, everybody. So in this reports, in this one income statement report, I have, for this one report income statement, this button here called visibility. Now here I can usually more efficiently, as I define who can see that, more efficiently I define it at the role/group level. Like here is group 1 designer or group number 2 viewer. But I could say, nope, I could get down to the individual user level, but usually not. It's more efficient at the role or group level. Well, I could have said, hey, everybody gets this report. But nope, I said not everybody, because maybe on the balance sheet, it might be only my power user role that has on the balance sheet. And if they do have access, are they able to run the report on the fly? Sometimes your wish is yes, sometimes maybe no, because maybe you might be the control freak essentially where you do all the journal entries only when you're done with close when you run reports. So there are some additional settings of what you are going to allow your end users to do or not. And we have something similar in the budget versions. I might be working on the best case budget or mass, maybe budget version 1 or version 2. Maybe on budget version 2, the best case only internally we're working on. So we have visibility also at the budget level, or budget version, I should say. Okay, a few other little odds and ends. When I mentioned feedback, under the home button, on this feedback button, we can come up here if there's any new product suggestions, because most of our product new features that come over in the last few years come from our existing customer feedback, so we welcome that. Or if there's a support ticket or request you want to do, just give it a quick name and your email, and then automatically we have an entire support team and development team that monitors these throughout. So I call that our hotline into our support and development team for product suggestions and support cases. A few other little concluding remarks, and we'll see if there's any questions that came into the queue. I do see a lot of our existing customers on this phone call that any prospects, we offer a free trial version of Prospero. Not only this demonstration company I'm sharing with you, you can kick the tires to see if it meets your need, but also most existing Prospero customers, we actually took a sampling of their reports and data, maybe even converted them and brought them to the tool just to let you know the power, ease, and conversion ability that we've been chatting about earlier here. One little buzzword about upcoming events, just like you attended today's. Look out to our website, because we have probably about 4 to 5 of these every single month. And then once or twice a year, we have a full action-packed day or two, full day devoted to these, and also do record them. So I'll be sure to pass that along here. As I'm looking back to see if there's anything else I forgot, I think for the most part of now 50 minutes into the session, I think I've talked about most items here. I really didn't get too much into Scratch on some of the line sets or columns, but how about maybe an extra phrase that, as I'm now wrapping up this report, just to let you know here, like using summary accounts, I can come up here also and build, but usually I don't do this. Yeah, here's my graphical tree, like the one tree, ignore the others. But let's say I'm on a balance sheet. Oops, I clicked a little quickly and hastily there. Now, really, if I wanted to bring in individual accounts, let's call this all my current asset accounts, I could do so. But no, I don't. Instead, just have one symbol line like this. That might be current assets and expand. Now, the reason why I also brought back to the line set, because if I created from scratch, that may be one possibility. But then the other thing I wanted to do is similar in nature to my column. In my column, we had the periods, and then I added company. But now in my line set, here might be my natural, but let's say also I wanted to filter on locations. I just simply turn this on. It gave me a new filter. So if the report needs to be, this top right row might be revenue for location 1, or maybe beneath it, revenue for location 2. And then maybe I might have trend 12-month in the column instead of maybe locations side by side like I had companies side by side. We have other tons of bells and whistles, like a little print preview here at the very bottom. You don't have to rerun a report. So if I want to do some little font controls, I can sort of see what that reflects like on the report without having to rerun it all the time. And let me now jump over to the question queue. It's actually a separate window or two I have to go to. In the meantime, as I maybe filter through those couple of questions, let me pull up my concluding slide here and my email. So if you have any follow-up questions, I'll at least leave that there, and just give me a second as I see if any questions came into the queue. All right. No specific question coming up currently. And I see there's a few MSX staff on this phone call. I know it might be short-lived just to say if there's any other remarks you want to add. Feel free to raise your hand if you wanted to add a couple remarks or two. If not, that's perfectly fine, but just in case they had an extra remark or two. And that could even go for anybody else in this phone call. You could raise your hand and I can unmute you from the session, but usually we encourage us to do the chat through the Q&A log here. Sorry, as I'm resizing a couple windows on my end, I don't see any additional questions or raised hands. I'm sure there's probably a couple things I forgot, but usually I get a little bit long-winded and over my time, but we have maybe about 5 to 7 minutes to spare. And let me look back to the original agenda items one more time in case there's anything else to further share. Here's one little miscellaneous. Under File Options, in your past world, you never had consistent global settings on your reports you could do. They were all at individual reports. So one other little nice new feature here. Under File and then Options, especially on this session devoted to reports, here might be some of our report defaults. Globally, I can define like, maybe I want to suppress lines with no balances globally on my reports. Or additionally, maybe I want to reverse signs like revenues or liabilities, etc. Maybe globally reverse those across our reports. And then we have some other settings here, but those are some of the more common ones. Or let's say on the budgeting side that we might have some different colors we want. And I'll just show you maybe one quick splash screen, because how about for colors, especially on the budget, I like to personally have all my calculated items shown with a gray background. And then what I'm going to do, and then we're going to have a session upcoming on the budgeting side. I'm going to take you just one quick screen on that. And I just went under close all tabs, and since I was playing around a lot, I'll just say no to all the changes there. And on the input side, now what you're going to see, sort of tying it full circle, we have basically the same line set used for my report using for budget entry. Now this line set actually shows some additional accounts, but probably we should have had that good old total expense line set. Looks like maybe someone changed that after this, but want to reiterate that at least at high level. And I'll just open this for what I call Department A, this budget. Now, real time as I began the session, and then I'm going to wrap up with, now here might be my budget, gray lines you stay away from, and I think I had also ran it for 2019. I should have ran it for 2020 to have a little bit more data. Excuse that. Now, real time, using this cookie cutter approach, I can then pull up 20 different departments, all sharing that same line set. As I enter my budget data with all the bells and whistles down to revenue, HR, capital details, it's all self-contained in this one system. So those people I see on the call that are Prospero customers using both budget and actual, that sort of ties all that efficiencies together here. HR tab, like salaries is locked. I'm in Department A, like 4100, 100. Here, meet my staff by name or position. Here's capital, maybe IT equipment, new purchases I'm budgeting for. This is just a profit and loss, but then this might be a balance sheet and cash flow budget. Here's my line item detail, like advertising. I can on the fly insert another line item to break it out by whatever on the fly, little memos or notes behind it. Audit trail history, like who changed the account and when. So here's now audit history if there were a person making the change, but there is a quick little glimpse on the budgeting side that maybe ties that final report together. And then I'll wrap it up and see if there's any final question with the one report I began with. That is my actual to budget report. Okay, as I leave this one report open, let me just resize a window or two and go back to the question in case, if any. Okay, real time, as I edit my budget, there it is, self-contained. All right, excuse the click. I wish GoToWebinar were a little more efficient. We usually have a second or third party monitoring that, but it's me today. All right, I do not see any additional questions that came into the queue, so I'll say a big thank you for joining us today, and look for you to in a future webinar. Like I have another one starting in about 30 minutes to now on multi-company consolidation. So thank you one and all. If you have any additional items to share, there is my email once again. So thanks for joining us and have a good rest of your day.